Hello YouTube! Today we are going to talk about the new image component in Next.js. With it we can send resized and optimized images to our browser. Let's say we have a user in a very small viewport, for example a mobile phone. We don't need to send a very high resolution for that device. On the contrary, if we are in a very large device, we probably need to send a higher resolution image to that specific device. Another very good advantage of using this image component in Next.js is that Next.js will check which image formats your browser receives and then will send that specific image format. At the time, the best image format that Next.js supports is the WebP format. There is already in the source code some references to a newer and better format called AVIF. So in the future you may expect that Next.js will add that format. Apart from the performance improvements that will make our application faster, there is another benefit by using this image component, which is that we will minimize the layout shifts in our application. If you don't know what is a layout shift, let me give you this as an example. We have a div, an image, and another div. When we load this in our browser, the first thing that happens is that we will get this result. A few milliseconds after, the image will load. When that image loads, it will shift our second div to the bottom of the page. That is called a layout shift and is something that we should try to avoid in our applications. Google already announced that in the future they will take these cumulative layout shifts as a metric for your page ranks in Google. So it's something we should take into consideration. Let me just add one last note before we jump into code. This component was announced during the Next.js conference in collaboration with the Google Chrome team. So a lot of people send me messages asking if this is something that only works with Google Chrome or if this also works in Firefox and Safari and other browsers. And the answer is, this is 100% web standards. You can even see that when we have this image component in Next.js, it will generate this HTML with source sets and sizes. That means that this is 100% web standards. To prove you that, during this video, I will even be using only Firefox, okay? I will not touch Chrome during this video. You can also see inside those source sets that we have an API endpoint over there, which means that those components will call an API from Next.js at runtime, and so our build time is not affected by that. It has a small drawback if you are doing next export, like Guillermo Roche said over there. If you are trying to host your pages in, for example, GitHub pages, it will not work for you. In order to explain the source set attribute to you, I already went ahead and created a file with an image using the normal source attribute. And what we are saying to our browser over here is, independently of our browser width or our viewport width, our browser will always download that specific image. If we want to give more information to our browser to take smarter decisions and load only the images it needs for that specific viewport width, we can use the source set attribute. If you want to support also IE11, I recommend that you keep a source always there, okay? If you don't care about older browsers like IE11, you can altogether remove this source and just use the source set, okay? So using the source set, what we can do is the following, is to say, okay, I have this source and this source has some amount of pixels horizontally. In this case, it's 800 pixels. The pixels unit is not valid inside a source set, so we need to replace it by W, which is the valid unit to represent the amount of pixels horizontally on that specific image. Then we can load the other three images we have over here, which is the medium image, and then we will also load the large image. So our medium image is 1200 pixels, so we can now copy this one and load our large image, which will be 1600 pixels, and so 1600 pixels over there. Now, if we go into our browser, you can see, if I refresh this, that we only load the small image because we are in a very small viewport. When I increase the viewport a little bit, you will see that I downloaded the medium image right now because the viewport is slightly larger, so our browser took the assumption that it needs a little bit larger image in order to keep it crisp and beautiful for our users, right? Then, if I keep increasing the viewport, as you may imagine, sooner or later I download the large image. Now, you may be asking yourselves, look, Bruno, that's all very good, but I have a question. We are saying that that image is 800 pixels, but no way your browser at the moment is 800 pixels, right? And you are right, my browser at the moment is 455 pixels, and I'm already downloading an image that is 1600 pixels width. So what's happening over here? Well, you need to be aware that on Windows, Mac OS, and even Linux, if you go to your display settings, you will have something called scale or zoom, depending on the operating system. If you are using a Mac, you are probably familiar with the term retina display. And basically a retina display means that your software is having a pixel, but in reality that pixel is 2 or even 3 or 4 hardware pixels, right? So in order to keep your image crisp, your screen is behaving, or your software is behaving as if it has less resolution, but then you have a lot of resolution in hardware. In my case, I have a 4K screen, but as you can see, I have a pixel density of 250%, right? So what it means, if I go back to my browser, is the following. I have the 800 pixels, right? And if I divide the 800 by what we call devicePixelRatio, which is in my case 2.5, I can even show it to you. devicePixelRatio is 2.5 because of my 250%, right? What's happening is the following. Our 800 pixel image, we will divide by 2.5, which is my devicePixelRatio. And so we will change from the small image to the medium image at around 320 pixels. Then we will change from the medium image to our large image at around 480 pixels. So let's come over here and validate that. Let's put around 320 pixels, right? Let me go to the smaller one, around 320. And as you can see, if I'm on 316 pixels, I'm on the small. When I increase a bit, I will go to 320.8 and I load the medium one. Then if I go, I think it's 480 pixels, I will start to download the large image. So 482, 478, right? So over here is our breakpoint, if you want to call it that way. You can also see that our browser at this moment is always assuming that our image is occupying 100% of the screen. But what if you are using stuff like Bootstrap or any other library and you are doing something like this? Imagine that you are in Bootstrap, you will have something like this, right? Class name equals to row, and then you will have, for example, an image with class name equals to call sm6, for example, right? So what we are going to say is that our image will be half of the screen. And if our image is half of the screen, we would like to tell our browser, look, after this specific screen width, my image is no longer 100%, is now 50%. Let me just go to the Bootstrap website to copy the Bootstrap source tag, and I will come back to you. I already went to the Bootstrap website, so I can now do the following, and I have this link to the Bootstrap CSS. And now if I go to my browser, you will see that I can refresh. And if I refresh, I will have the large image at around 576 or 68, wherever Bootstrap does that media query. And then it will be a 2-column layout. But when there is a 2-column layout, I would love to let my browser know that my image is no longer occupying 100% of the screen, is now only occupying 50% of the viewport. So we can do that with the sizes property. So let me come over here, format this code, and thank you VS Code. It becomes even uglier than it was. But let's say we have the sizes over here, and the sizes over here will behave as the normal media queries you already know in CSS. So we can come over here and say the following: min width of, I think it was 568 pixels that Bootstrap had that breakpoint. And then when the browser is bigger than 568 pixels, we will say we only want 50% of the viewport. By the way, percentages are not valid over here, okay? So we need to use VW. And then everything else, it will be 100%. You can see this as a if-else, right? So if for some reason over here you have something like this, let's say you have something like this, now 768, right? Which is the next breakpoint in Bootstrap, I guess, or 767, something like that. This one will catch everything, right? Because min width 578, if the min width is 900, it will be catched inside this one. So this one will never be triggered. So keep attention to that because the order is important. So in that case, you will have to do something like that for the 33% of the viewport, right? So we can come even over here now and do call, instead of being SM, I think the next breakpoint in Bootstrap is MD, and we will do 4. So at this stage, if we have more than 767 pixels, we are telling our browser that our image is only 33% of the screen. Then when we have the 2-column layout is 50% of the screen, and everything else, which means 1-column layout, it will be 100% of the screen. If I go back to my browser and I refresh this, you can see that now I'm in ML, I go to grow, it goes to the small one. Every time I keep growing and I go to the 767, you see that on the 2-column layout, it was a medium. Then when I increase even more, it goes to a 3-column layout. So my image is smaller and now it downloads the small image again. If you want, I can come over here, copy paste this one, and I will put, instead of the red image, I will put the blue image. So we have now 2 images for you to see, right? And I will then do a commit with those 2 images and deploy this into Vercel. So you can see this. Oops, I copied this wrong. Good job, Bruno. What I did wrong. Yeah. Good job, Bruno. It happens. Let me just copy paste now this. Copy, paste over there. And now everything seems to be good. So I will go back and I went one too much. And now you can see that when I am in the medium ones, I'm downloading the large ones for both. When the browser starts to grow, it will go both to the medium one. And then when I keep growing, I will go both to the medium one, and then I will go both to the small device. Now, if I go back to my IDE, you can see that I have both like that. If I remove the sizes from one of them, I will remove the sizes from the blue. You can see that the blue now is loading the larger one because my browser is assuming that my blue image is 100% of the screen. So I will probably even do the commit like that. So you can see the difference between the 2 images, right? So when I keep going down, my blue is always large. And I will also do a deploy to Vercel, so you can see that in the comments down below. Now that we understand about the source set and the sizes property, it's time for us to load more images into the same page. So over here I think I have 10 or 12 images, and I already mapped all of those images into this photos array, so you don't see me typing for the next 10 or 20 minutes all the widths, the heights and the sources, right? Over here on this normal image component, I'm already looping through that array and just creating normal HTML EMG tags. Nothing special over here. So if I go into my browser, you can see that all of these images, they are just the EMG tag. Nothing special over there. You can also see that they are not responsive, so nothing happens to my images. Now, if I want to convert this normal HTML image tag into the Next.js image component, the only thing I need to do is to come over here and do the following: image, and now I will do import image from next/image. That's all you need to do in order to convert it, right? It was just a few characters different. Now, if I go over here and I refresh, all the images that we are going to see were processed through the image component of Next.js. I can do an inspect element, and you will be able to see that in this inspect element, we have also source sets, and you will notice that these source sets are slightly different than the ones we saw 2 minutes ago. Over here, they are only using the 1x and 2x. So you see 2x over here and 1x over here. What that means is that they are only taking care about the device pixel ratio. So if the device pixel ratio is 1, they are loading this image. If the device pixel ratio is 2, they are loading this image, or bigger than 2, they are loading that image. Usually what I like to do is to do what I showed you before, taking into account the device pixel ratio, but also the dimensions of my browser in pixels. And if you want to do that as well, you just need to do one more thing. Layout equals to responsive. And that gives you another benefit. Apart from also being responsive on the way down, like the intrinsic, it now also grows to the full screen of your container. So in this case, it will fill all of the container of that image. This is usually very good, but keep in mind that if your image is very small and your container is very large, trying to stretch that image, it will probably become a bit pixelated. But now, if I do inspect, you can see that inspecting that image, for example, you can see that we have source sets with a lot of options. Next.js puts a lot of options. Sorry. You can see that we have 640, 750, 828. We have like 8 or 9 options over there. In my example, we only had 3, so Next.js is putting enough images. If you want to override those values, you can override those values in the next.config.js, and I will leave an image over there with that change, right? But usually, I don't think you need to change that because the values are very, very good. Now, the question that you are probably asking for the last 2 minutes, which is, Bruno, show me the difference in performance comparing the normal EMG tag and the Next.js image component with this layout responsive. So let's see that. So on the left, we have the normal EMG tag, the HTML EMG tag that we know and love. And on the right, we have the Next.js image component using the layout to responsive, okay? So I think the numbers speak for themselves. I don't need to say much. You can stop the video, compare the two, everything between the two. And then when you are ready, we will go back over here. If we do inspect and I go down to this list, you will see that my last image doesn't even have a source yet. And this is one of the best benefits as well from the Next.js image component. It only loads the images that are visible in our viewport. This last image is not visible, so there is no need to download it yet. If I start to scroll, you will see that this bit will blink in a second. When I reach the end, this bit blinks, and now we have a source set, and we start to download that image, all right? So this is very, very impressive what the Next.js image component is doing over here. I need to show you one more layout, actually 2 more layouts. The next layout that I want to show you is a very obvious one, which is the fixed. And as you may imagine, it will do very similar to what the normal HTML image does. So it will not stretch and it will also not shrink. So it's always that size no matter what happens, right? It might be very useful for you, but I never use that one specifically, okay? The next one that's very useful is the fill. And when we use fill, we can't use the width and the height, okay? So we will remove the width and the height. And in this moment, it doesn't make sense to have an array of images because what's going to happen is that we will fill the container if the container is a position relative, right? So if you have a div with a position relative, it will fill that container. But in my case, what I want to show you is how to do background images, right? So I will remove everything from here, and I will also remove this. And now I will remove this key, and the source will be just this oliveira-wins.jpg. So oliveira-wins.jpg. I don't need this alt tag. I can say just Oliveira wins in Portugal. Doesn't matter what we put there for the demo, right? And so if I put the fill and I go back to my browser, I need to refresh this, and you will see that when I refresh this, I had a problem. What was the problem? Oliveira wins doesn't exist that image. Okay, probably I made a mistake. Oliveira-wins.jpg. Okay, let's do this because sometimes I fail what I'm doing, and I just need to do /photos/Oliveira-wins.jpg. Now I can refresh, and now you have Oliveira wins over there. It's now as the background of our page, but we have this small detail, if you want to call it a detail. It's a huge problem, right? So you can use something called the objectFit. If you don't know about it, we can open the Next.js documentation, next.js.org, go to the docs, and when we go to the docs, we can click on the image, and we will go, I think that's the one. We go to the image, and then at the bottom, we will have something called the objectFit and the objectPosition. For us, the first thing we want is the objectFit, but immediately after, we will also need the objectPosition. This is nothing special from Next.js. Next.js is just passing these properties as normal CSS, and there is nothing special from Next.js. This is just CSS over here. Next.js is just giving us the helpers to use that directly, right? So the one we want at the moment, and I will use, will be the objectFit to cover. So let me come over here to my browser once again and say the objectFit equals to cover, right? And immediately the image from Miguel will look much, much better. So now the image is no longer being stretched as it was. Miguel looks nice, but we have a slight problem with this image still. If I make these developer tools being docked at the bottom, you can't see Miguel's face because Miguel's face is at the bottom of the image. And for that, we will use the objectPosition. And in my case, I will just use the objectPosition as bottom and centered. If I do that, I can come again into my IDE. I will do objectPosition equals to bottom center. And now if I go back over there and I open Miguel's face, now Miguel's face is always on the screen. Well, unless I go to extreme measures, but Miguel's face is usually always on the screen. If I go dock to the right, Miguel's face is always on the screen as well. And as you can see, if you want to be very detailed, you can go to this 50% or 60% or even putting 250 pixels, stuff like that, right? So you can go very, 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 very deep on that. Now, I have two more things to show you before we wrap up this video that might be very important for you or not important for you. The first one is the loading. So when we are scrolling, sometimes you want a specific image to be always there. Doesn't matter if it is on the viewport or not. Imagine that image is very important, and when the user scrolls, it needs to be there already. You can say that for that specific image, the loading is not lazy, but is eager. By default, is lazy. So only when we scroll, Next.js changes the source to have the source and the source set, so the browser starts to download. If you want to make, let's say, an image, and let's just do Ctrl-Z once again to go back to our array, right? Then when I commit, I will have multiple pages on the left with all the examples there, so don't worry too much. So if I just remove these now, and I can come over here and say the following, loading equals to, and if it is the last photo, for example, we think that last photo is very important, so we want to show it all the time. We can do something like this, photos.length equals to an index. We can receive the index over here, and we can do index plus 1. If that's true, then it will be eager. All the other images will still be lazy, and lazy is the default, okay? So I can now go back over here to our browser, refresh this page, and you will see that, by the way, this sometimes happens. Next.js crashes loading one of the images in development mode. It never happened to me on production or even in my Linux machine. It's only on my Windows machine. You can see here that it failed in a link. So if you kill the server, and you restart the server again, then that image will load, which was the first image. I can go again here. Oops, I went a bit too much. I will refresh and you will see that the first image now will load. Okay, so it's a problem that sometimes happens to me on Windows, only on Windows and only on development mode. I don't know if it's a bug on my computer or general, but at least if it happens to you, you know what to do. Go there, kill the server and restart it again. Now, what I was saying is that now this last image, so this is the first image, but if I scroll up to the penultimate image, that penultimate image doesn't have a source, but our last image will have a source already and a source set. So it doesn't matter if I scroll, that image is already there downloaded. This might be useful for you. The last thing that might be useful for you, and I use it probably a bit too much, is the quality of the image, right? There is a property over here called the quality of the image. And this quality of the image goes from 1 to 100%. Next.js by default sets it at 75%, but most of the times, even if you put, let's say, 50% or 40%, is just good enough. So let me just delete this one. I will also have a demo for this specific one, so don't worry. So if I come over here and I do, for example, quality equals to 30%, I'm putting all my images to 30%, and you will see that they still look acceptable, not perfect, but still acceptable. And we removed quite a few kilobytes from each image, right? So as you can see over here, if I refresh, yeah, we notice that especially in those leaves, there is a bit more pixelation, but honestly, sometimes I use that. I go as low as like 25. You can use that to get even better results. By default, Next is on 75. One last note before we wrap it up. You can see that these sizes at the moment, it's saying that it defaults to device sizes. In the future, in the next version 10.04, it will become 100 VW. That's a pull request that a familiar face opened to Next.js. And the reason that that was happening was that Next.js in the sizes property was saying that if the screen was up to, I think it was 568 or something like that, the image would become 568. So in very small devices, we were still downloading a very large image. I will leave a link to that pull request in the description if you want to have a look into it. So any questions you might have or anything that might change in the future, I will leave a comment pinned below. So please have a look into the comments below, because if there is something that changes, I will pin a comment. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, let me know and I will answer to all of them. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.